without any further ado, Helen Shaw, John Turturro, Andrei Belgrader. Thank you very much.
I'd like to start first just with a show of hands. Sorry, I just came from NYU, so that's where I'm starting. Who here knows the Master Builder already? Who knows the text? Okay, so a few people who maybe need a little grounding. Could I ask you, Andrei, to describe the show?
You mean to tell the story of the play?
With no spoilers, if possible.
No spoilers. I read some awful translations, I have to say, before we chose this one. It's a real problem with translations with Ibsen. It's very hard because it's half in Norwegian, half British, all sorts of things, and it's very, very hard for actors to actually speak the language. And I'm sure it's wonderful in Norwegian, but it's not easy to translate. So there is this guy who builds, right? John will know better than I do, but I'll try. And he has a wife, and he has an office, and he does all sorts of evil things that I will not disclose with his secretary or his helper there. I can't disclose those things, it's shameful. And he's haunted by little creatures, apparently, that push him into strange places and pushed him to success. He's extraordinarily successful. And the creatures apparently do that. And some young girl just shows up, and the whole kind of miraculous thing starts. And there's a lot of sexual tension, esoteric tension, philosophical tension, and many other tensions provoked by the girl, who's an extraordinary being. And things start moving into a very unusual direction between the two of them, between the girl, who apparently when she was 13, she maintains that she was kissed by the master builder at the time, who happened to build a church with a very, very tall steeple. And she's been in love with him ever since. And according to her, he promised to her within 10 years he'll come, make her a princess, give her a kingdom. And here we are in fairy tale. I don't know if you hear what I'm saying. I just heard what I was saying. I said, my God, it's a fairy tale. And that's one of the temptations about the play. It's a myth, it's a fairy tale, it's all sorts of beautiful things, and very deep, and extremely dark, by the way, too. But as I'm jumping all over the place, but my assistant, who has a friend who's Norwegian, the Norwegian friend said, "You're doing Ibsen? It better had power, sex, and humor." And I went, humor? You know, power, sex, of course, but humor. And actually, I think it has humor. I didn't realize that, which is lost probably at times in translation. So I don't know if I should reveal much more. That's just the beginning of it, and it keeps moving, and it has an unexpected end. And for those of you who read it, I will beg you to forget how it ends, so you can be surprised. You will still be surprised, I think, even if you know the end.
So I think you have said that you didn't like the Ibsen that you had read, I think, and that you are the one who brought Master Builder to the table. Is that right?
Yes.
This will be an easy conversation. Thank you. So why with this? Because it is true that very few people think of it as a laugh riot. And what is it that draws you? What is it that made you want to do Master Builder?
Well, I've done some difficult plays with Andrei. You know, we've done a couple Beckett plays. We did Godot and Endgame, and we did Cherry Orchard, and then we did Troilus and Cressida many years ago. And I was talking to Joe Malillo, and we were talking about, he wanted me to do a play, and there were certain plays that were being done. And it was a play I had worked on at Yale. My father was a builder, so maybe that's why I picked it up. I had never read it. I was, oh, it's about a builder. So, I remember I liked the story of it. The translation, it was the classic translation by Rolf Felder. Is that how you say his name? And Andrei, when I mentioned it to Andrei, he was horrified. But he likes Bergman, and I like Bergman too. When we were talking, we both like Peer Gynt, and then when he read it, he saw there were really interesting themes, because it's about aging, it's about ambition, it's about the cost of doing something. You know, sometimes you dream something and then you make your dreams come true. If you're driven, it's about staying viable at a certain age. And I thought there was some really kind of savage, elemental themes in the piece with this sort of fairy tale. And but I didn't realize how hard of a play it actually was to try to put on its feet. It's never done. It's never done, practically. And I think Olivier did it. I think maybe Michael Redgrave did it. But it's a play that people talk about, but you never see. I saw one production, and it was terrible. And but this is a much thinner translation, and we've taken out all the English elements of it, and we've actually reduced some of the dialogue in some ways. Translators have been open to that, so we could play things and not describe everything. Because in a lot of these plays, it was the beginning of psychology. You know, Freud was influenced by Ibsen, and everything is told. And it's hard to play when you tell everything. But sometimes, you know, you only need a couple sentences to say something. And so I think people are going to, maybe they'll be surprised. But it's certainly, we're trying to make it alive, so people first, out, stay awake. I mean, that's the most important thing, is that people pay attention, and they're interested, because otherwise there's no reason to do it, and there's no reason to do theater. So I figured, since Andrei didn't like Ibsen, he'd be the perfect person to do it. So we have our own relationship, So.
Which is just a flawless segue. Thank you so much. The plan works out. You do have a very long history. BAM audiences just recently saw you do Endgame together, but you actually go back quite far. When did you first meet?
Andrei was the third-year acting teacher when I was at Yale, and so he was my third-year acting teacher. And then we, became friends afterwards, and we've done a lot of different readings. He was in a movie that I was in, and I've actually introduced him to some people, and he's introduced me to other people, and so we've had a relationship for a long time. And we have a very open relationship. We fight a lot and stuff like that. And when we did Endgame, he basically drove me, to the point of, I didn't think I could go on anymore. But that's, he's a director who's gotten great things out of actors, and I've seen a lot of his shows that I haven't been in, and you have too. And I saw Moon Over Miami. He did this John Guare play at Yale, which I thought was fantastic. I never saw Ubu Rock, which we've done a workshop of, which I'd like to do someday. But he usually, if you go to see one of his shows, they're very lively. Yeah.
Do you remember what you thought of him in your third-year acting class?
Oh, I thought of Ibsen for a second. It's easier.
The mutton
I
chop
thought he was
whiskers.
brilliant. right away. I did. I actually did. Even though that was a horrible class. The group, it was a horror. But there were some great people in there. But the thing was a horror, the group.
This is strangely Beckettian, the idea of the two of you in the house and you're covered in dust. It's really, it's like Endgame Part 2. So, yeah.
Loftier than mine.
So you have had this, so moving forward from the dust period, how many shows have you done together?
This is our fifth show, but I've done readings of other things, and we've worked on other things together. Yeah.
So you would assume, or I would assume, that that would make things easier and harder. Easier because I assume you now share a language and a vocabulary. But is there anything that makes it trickier that you know each other so well?
No, I really, Andrei's gotten, he's not afraid, to really push me, and really push me, and he's not. I mean, sometimes he's result oriented, but.
And John is not shy to let me
no,
know.
No, but when you work in the theater, it's really about who you're working with. And I like that there's a relaxed atmosphere, and it's not like, there are certain directors, they sort of have their approach, and you watch one of their productions and you kind of see the design of it, but I'm never like thrilled by it or tickled by it, or it doesn't surprise me. And I like working with Andrei, and I'm a little gun shy when I work in the theater because it's really who you work with, and that's it. And it's important to me to be in a room that has a nice atmosphere, and that we're all trying for the same thing. Yeah.
And in that process, where are you right now? So in this particular process, how far along are you, and what kind of point, can you describe the point you've reached?
We're quite far along, actually. We're almost close to tech, so we better be far along. And I think we are far
BAM
along.
people wiping their brows as you say that.
Yeah, yeah. Aren't we? We are far along. I mean, there'll be some transformations. There are transformations towards the end, usually very exciting, I think. So I'm looking forward to that. But I do think we are very, very advanced with it. I think by now the play is very clear. I also think the play will have appeal from where we are now, so an audience will be in with it. Not, I hate when the connection between a play and an audience is simply intellectual, meaning like Ibsen, he must be good for you like soy or something. You know what I mean? I do think it's already where we are, I feel it's a live place that people can relate directly and kind of go with it, not be preached at or something like that, which I have seen it, God knows, a few times with Ibsen. Not that he's a very good playwright, by the way. Besides my hate for him, I love him too. But I've seen so many awful productions that it's really terrifying. So.
Well, and it wears its 19th century origin very much on its frock coat sleeve. How are you? Are you modernizing? Are you finding contemporary emotions within a period piece? How are you kind of grappling with that?
Emotions are emotions. We're not saying fuck, in the play, which we would like to, but we're not. But the story of a older man, trying to hold on to his position, and this young woman comes in and and he's been through all kinds of, tragedy in his life that's also given him opportunity. It should be, you should be able to recognize that, and it should be, relevant. And if it's not, then it's a failure. You know, then it's not that, you know, it's really not that interesting. So that's your job. I mean, one reason I was interested in it was because one of my favorite books is written by Knut Hamsun, Hunger. And I like Pan, and I like mysteries, and I think I love him, even though then later on, you know, he was accused of being a Nazi, you know, and stuff, when he won the Pulitzer later on. But they kind of, when he was a young man, he was almost the father of the modern novel when you read it. Any writer will talk about that book. You know, Singer wrote the introduction, and Paul Auster is a good friend of mine. That's one of his favorite books. And he did a lecture when Ibsen was old, and I guess he ripped Ibsen to shreds when Ibsen came to see this lecture. He was this young, wild guy. And this play is a little bit of his response to Knut Hamsun. So I keep that book Hunger in my mind, and it's a very, very modern book when you read it. And it's very funny, you know. And so that's just something that always interested me about the play. Unfortunately, the writing isn't this, you know, the same way. It's much more constructed and explained, but it's a play, so it's different, you know.
And you can feel the actual tensions with, I mean, you feel modernity literally knocking at the door in it, you know, even its conventional. I think even in Ibsen's slightly rigid family formulations, you can almost feel how angry he is by virtue of how strongly he's hanging on to these conventions by his teeth. So I
would like to add something, because I think what can destroy the play is not its content. I think what destroys it, he wrote in a formula that was kind of deadly. And it's funny because that happened to Chekhov too, to some extent. And Chekhov was extraordinarily upset that Stanislavski was a good guy, but didn't understand, obviously, Chekhov. Chekhov could not have been more upset that he does these gloomy things when he wrote these grotesque comedies. And what happened, I think, in that case and in this case, what was on stage at that moment had certain conventions. Like you had tons of chairs and windows and all sorts of objects. Like with Chekhov, it's easier to say they all drink tea while you go to sleep. And they pour the tea, they do all that nonsense. Now Chekhov, if you know Chekhov and his short stories, he's one of the snappiest writers possible. So he couldn't have possibly wanted that. But he gave in a little bit to the style of what was around, like the formula theater functioned in. And I think that happens with Ibsen, and we are stripping it completely. So we are not going at all in that formula.
No.
And luckily we have, luckily we have a genius set designer, Santo Locasto, who is probably one of the best in the world. And so it's replaced by something that allows a completely different take while trying to be actually faithful to the content. Because I do think the content has value, as much as I've been bitching about poor Ibsen, but the content is, there's something fabulous and interesting and truthful and really passionate about it. So I think that's the fault that you can fall into and never recover if you take the formula and apply it to. It doesn't mean modernizing per se. Our costumes will be more or less of the period. That's not what it is. It's, you know, all about furniture, for example, could be one way to put it. Go, open the window, close the door, all sorts of things, and then talk all sorts of things, and it just gets, it could get deadly. But I think we're stripping that all completely away. So I think the play lives by its real value, in fact.
So what is the work you do in rehearsal? When you talk about stripping it, you are in some ways literally changing the language, because David Edgar, the translator, you say, has given you this kind of access, this radical permission to just to zip line through it. What are the actual things you do? Like, what is the process of stripping away a century of atmosphere?
But I do think already David Edgar did a fabulous translation. So to begin with, that's already happened before we even got in. Remember when we did the audition, I remember I was shocked how well the words fit in people's mouths. So it's his fault what's good there. And we are just at the margins, you know. Sometimes something goes on for too long and we make it shorter because we need to get to the bars earlier and other reasons. And we don't want to torture people. We want people to enjoy and take it in. What I mean is there's a certain thing about the patience and the attention span people have. And I think stripped of very little, it's not that much we are massacring, in fact. And with that, again, the play has value. This is not... this is not some valueless play. This is a fabulous play.
Well, there are passages in the play that explain everything, and when you have it all, it's like climbing up a mountain with a big backpack, and you can't play it, and you're not going to receive it because the actor has to do all these pyrotechnics to make it interesting to arrive at an emotional point. But if you take a few lines out or 3 lines out, and you can just do it in a really, sharp way, then you can land on something. You don't need to hear it 17 times. You know what I mean? The guy, if he says, he feels bad about something, or he carries this debt in him, then you try to say it in the sharpest way. I mean, both Andrei and I have worked on Beckett, together, and that sort of. I think I would say for us, besides Shakespeare, the sharpness of that, remains with you, because it's so sharp, that there's nothing wasted, and we wouldn't, fool around with that, you know what I mean, at all. So and we made, but we made that live in a way which a lot of people, it's all gloom, Our production had a lot of humor in it and a lot of brutality. And it was mean and cruel and funny, and it had real feelings that were going across the room. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this. We're just trying to distill it. This, I guess, Ibsen is really big in Asia, and I guess in Japan and China. They do all these different productions, and we've read about one production where they start at the end of the play. And it all takes place in his head. So, which is it seems to be, it does kind of take place in his head in some ways. And I think they distill it also. So our production is very Japanese. That's it.
That's the takeaway.
No, but we are distilling it. And if you think about, adaptations of things, that's what you do a little bit. So.
Well, Ibsen was very much a poet. And when he wrote Peer Gynt or
Brand,
that's you can feel that. And then sometimes with the more realistic plays, he just adjusted to what he saw on stage at the time.
Yeah.
So we're trying, in fact, I like to think we are more faithful to him, trying to bring that side, not the kitchen sink side, that was, I think, prompted by what he was seeing around the 19th century style.
And if you think of the last 2 shows you did together, and this being the third point on a triangle, so you did Cherry Orchard and Endgame, and now Master Builder, they do all 3 seem to share sort of a set of concerns, maybe, about anxiety and ownership of your life. Is there something that you want to? Yeah.
We're talking about
death. Are you worried
death.
about something, or is there something that's drawing you? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what is it that draws you about these plays?
I think when I read Endgame again before we we were going to do it, to me it seemed like the most realistic play that I had read. I felt like, wow, I understand this. I was, 50. I really, understand this play. I understand once you go through, and I've read a lot about Beckett, death, and you get older or whatever. I also thought it was hilarious, but, any play that starts with, can there be misery loftier than mine? I mean, everybody walks around with that. Everyone was walking down the street, can there be misery loftier than mine? And then he says, no doubt, no doubt. My father, my mother, my dog, he says, yes, there's other people who could suffer, but does that mean their sufferings equal mine? You know what I mean? No doubt. He goes again, and you go to it and you're like, this is hilarious, and it's a, also, so that's sort of like the epitome of that. And yes, these plays are, they're connected. They're about time passing. The Cherry Orchard is about that, a world passing. Having someone usurp you, change it. So there's only so many stories, you know what I mean? And different ways that you execute that, So maybe those are things you're interested in certain times of your life. And if you can make a production that's vital, and then people can, relate to it from their own point of view,
I wanted to warn people so that they could stir this up in their minds, but there's going to be a moment for audience questions in like 10 minutes. So if you could be, generating. And when that happens, there are mics in the back that will come to you so that you can ask your question into a microphone. Okay, all right, begin to stew. So you said earlier that there was something about Andrei's productions that are uniquely alive, and also that he makes you work in a certain way. And I am really curious just about the specifics of, can you contrast work with Andrei with another director? How is it different? What is the room like? What do you do?
Well, I think there's not tension in the room. And there's not the feeling of, I have certain people who are very ambitious, you feel it. You feel their ambition to do it a certain way or whatever. And you kind of see that in the productions. And on Andrei's room, it's more relaxed, and it's more no holes barred. And he'll just say, well, that's terrible. That's melodramatic. That's whatever. And you're like spilling your guts out, and you're like, how could you say that to me? But it's not like there's nothing offensive about it. But I've worked in other situations where people just were pushing it, and there's a lot of people in the theater. I'm a little bit. I've worked with a lot of people in the theater, and then you wind up kind of directing yourself sometimes, or taking care of yourself. Or, for example, we did this play, and we were involved in the casting together. We read together, and Andrei, we had so many wonderful young actresses to choose from. And eventually, we narrowed it down and really came to the same conclusion. But it was very organic. And we didn't cast a big name, by the way. We cast a girl who people maybe know, but she's a wonderful young actress, Ren Schmidt, and she was fantastic. And that's something that's Andrei puts together a good group. And he does the kind of theater that I actually, he's my friend, but that I actually like to see. And it actually makes me, happy to go and want to do theater. And that's why I work with him. And that's it.
Can you answer the same question about what it is that is different about working together?
It terrifies me. No. adore John. I don't have much philosophical. I don't know. I think he can bring to life stuff that it's hard to guess or to foresee, and all of a sudden it takes shape in some manner that is not fully rational or not half rational sometimes. And I love that. I live for those moments where, I mean, if you think of any of the great plays ever written, it's not enough to do some nice, clean job. It's bringing guts to it and bringing wilderness to it and savagery and all sorts of things that involve a lot of intuition and instinct that John is, that's how he works, and I just love that.
Because you're creating a kind of accidental repertory here at BAM. I mean, you have worked here both together. You've also worked with Santo, both of you individually, I think, and then here with him. And together. Catherine Borowitz playing Aline, you have worked with in the... Many times. In Illuminata, I think in other...
Illuminata. I've done theater too. Yeah, plenty of times. And Ken Cheeseman I've worked with in the Cherry Orchard, and Andrei's worked with him many times.
Oh, and a Boston guy.
Yeah.
Great. So is there a possibility that this is is there kind of a little repertory ideal generating here? Is there something which is an actual company as opposed to kind of coming together for show after show?
I think we should go pray for that.
Yeah.
It's unusual in this country, unfortunately. Most of the repertory companies are gone, by the way, right now in the country. So it's a beautiful idea. Lots of prayers.
Okay, concentrate. Okay, so I did want to see if anybody had any questions for Andrei or John. I said that thing about microphones, and then I don't know. Oh, they're there.
Oh.
Hi. I'd like to actually direct this question to both of you. I'm curious what qualities in actors excite you to work with as both a director and a fellow actor to work with on stage and in the rehearsal process.
I love great actors, basically. I don't know how to say that. But people who can be both real on one hand and expressive, be capable of doing both things at the same time. For example, when I think Beckett is done a lot of times one of two ways. It's either not real, but very elaborate and very sophisticated, but extraordinarily boring, or it's done very realistic and completely boring. That's my best way to try to say what kind of actor, because an actor who can do both at the same time and bring the excitement, it makes me think always of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin and many others, but which Beckett thought of, but that's probably the shortest answer I can give.
Do you both teach? Do you teach ever?
I've done like master classes and things like that.
And you, of course, teach.
I do, yes.
So what do you say to people? So, because discovering fantastic theater creatures and monsters is the great fortune. But then what is it that you would tell people to do to develop those qualities? How do you teach?
It's a long story, but I don't know. It's a complicated thing. I try to teach generally for people to work on instinct and trust their instinct. And of course, there's a technical side to it too, which you slowly try to accomplish, without which you can't quite function. So you kind of go both ways at the same time. I mean, I don't know if this makes a lot of sense, but I would have to write the whole book, I guess, to really make sense. I mean, there's a certain method to it to get someplace. And, you know, you also, a lot of times I tell people quit because it's a horrible profession unless, you know, and hopefully the ones who don't quit, okay, now let's boogie, let's go and get someplace. But it's a hard, long trip. It's not an easy, fast, one formula trip. You know, it helps people, their experience, different teachers. I'm not a great believer in the guru method. I think different experiences, different teachers, different methods even add up. And eventually the actor forgets them all and is a genius, and then we're talking.
And is there a Turturro technique? I mean, is there
No,
any...
I've had a lot of different teachers, like Andrei
Yeah.
said, you know, and I do think it's good to be able to go moment to moment and work off your partner, but then you also have to be able to serve the text and be expressive and creative and then be truthful and then, you know. But I think the more experiences you have doing different kinds of plays and working with different teachers, I'm with Andrei. I don't believe in the guru method. I don't think that, because eventually you draw from everything. You know, you're your own material, and from all the different things you've been taught. You know, but there are basic things you need to do, you know, when you're working.
Hello. Hi. I have a question about how the audience might perceive the play, and I'm always interested in, can you hear me all right? And how the audience perceives it and as the production goes on. In other words, I'm buying a ticket for the production. Do I get it in the beginning of the production, at the end? Do I go in the front, in the back? I'm buying a seat towards the end of the production in the front row just because my eyesight's not that great. I see your actors' faces, but how would the experience be further back visually as far as the stage setting? And then also, this is a very short run, similar actors, but the same actors, but how would the production change over the month, and would you change in the dialogue at all to keep it fresh? And how would that experience be during this production?
I don't think we'd be changing the dialogue, no, but you know, you get it in your body more, and you grow, and you're able to sometimes be simpler. And also, you know, there's the simple, you know, Andrei will give us notes and orchestrate it, and there's the simple equation of fear when people go out. And people are afraid and are nervous, and you have to get, you know, past all of that, and then, you know, you get more relaxed, you know, doing it. But you're never not that. And it's always, you still have to, you know, jump off every night. So, you know, it changes, and things sometimes get better. If you do a really long run, it can also get really stale, too, and then you have to find a way out of that. I haven't done a really long run in a long, long time. So, you know, you see different things, you know. When we did Endgame, our wheelchair broke one night, and I fell over on stage, and that was, people really were thrilled to see that. It was like a car accident, you know, happening. And everyone talks about that, and, you know, I got like whiplash, you know, and, but wow, we were there that night, everybody was there. But you wouldn't have seen it once they fixed the chair, you know, a week later. But I think the play got better, and so it's always different, you know. You're going to see something different.
Yeah. Well, luckily, the Harvey is a fabulous theater. So it still will make a difference if you sit in the first row or the last row, because it's far the last row. But we are trying to aim it not only at the first few rows, by the way. We'll aim it as far away from the stage as possible. So I would still try to get tickets not in the very last row, if you will. Just a thought.
Yes, this is a question addressed to both of you. I'd like your thoughts on why the master builder actually climbs the steeple at the end.
Trying to figure that out.
Wow, that's a tough question.
Actually, I think it's in the play. It's in the structure of the play.
It's in the lines, but there's more to it.
There's a lot more to it.
There's a lot more. You're so
Yeah.
right. There are a lot of. Have you seen the movie The Seventh Seal by any chance? There's that. And that's all I have to say, obviously. So there's that. But then there is some kind of, I don't know. He does it to please her. There's way more than that. Again, Seventh Seal, I said with a very pointed way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are people who can see into people. That's part of the play. And sometimes you can meet a young person who can see into you and say, you know, you could be all these things, and you're no longer that. And you can push that person.
It's also trying to defeat old age.
I think he wants to be not just the master builder, the master builder.
Right.
And she feeds into that. She said,
Yeah.
and Faye feeds into
That's very intelligent, what he just
Yeah,
said.
what the
He doesn't
gentleman
want to be the
said,
master, he wants to be the master builder.
which is definitely it. That's one of the things that's definitely there.
You know, it's very interesting because there are lots of...
The one, the only, the ultimate, never anyone else master builder. And don't we all?
No, it's interesting. In my profession, there are actors that you meet, and they're great actors, but they're still very excited about seeing someone else do great work. And then there's other people you meet, and you realize there's no room in their wheelhouse for you. Even if you've just performed and they come and see you, it's like immediate, within 30 seconds. It's all about them, because there's only room for them. And it's a very human thing to say, I don't want anybody to be as good as me. And then there are people who are the exact opposite of that who are really, really accomplished. But that's something that it's a disease or something that comes along with accomplishment. It does. And you can be cut off to other people. And I think he did understand that. He does understand that in the play.
But it's also, there's one more side to it, because it's not only the social thing or the power and the climb. There's something deeply, when you look at tiny children, they want to be the only child in the world. And that doesn't always go away. And it comes at different forms.
I'm a middle child, so that's not, I never had that. No, it's
Right.
yeah.
No, also, you know, I mean, the ice is thin. It's very easy. For someone says, I want to be the only sex object for this other person. End of story. There is no one else. I want to be the architect, the one, the only. I think that's what makes the play interesting. I think at a very deep level, it's really, it has a universal something very recognizable.
Right. It's a good question.
One of the great playwrights is rarely, if ever, performed in New York, except for Enrico IV and 6 characters. I wonder if you'd be interested in doing something by Pirandello.
I've done a workshop of Henry IV with a new translation by Tom Stoppard, which I was interested in. But, you know, it's a little short, it's good, but it's a little short, his translation. But I think there are other plays of his that are really interesting. They haven't all been, you know, translated that well, but there are some really fascinating plays. So yes, I would be. Once again, translation is a big. I mean, I did an Eduardo Di Filippo play, and we worked on the translation endlessly. We did a Theater for New Audience, and then we took it to Naples, and we did it there. But it's a lot of times it's the translation, you know, especially in Italian plays. I would think Pirandello's like the only guy who's been translated.
It also goes in spurts, I think. I hope there will be a moment where Pirandello, if someone does it, usually what happens, all of a sudden, other people discover that thing, and I kind of hope they do, someone does. And then hopefully it will open the door.
It's done in England.
Right.
In England, yes, it is. Right. And so is Di Filippo. Right.
Is it on? Yeah. My question is really about Master Builder, but related to each one of you. What do you see your mission? What are you trying to achieve in the theater over your life?
Whoa. Oh, man.
Heavy. It's a fabulous question, yeah. I refuse to answer. Immortality, that's all.
Immortality.
Relating to Master Builder, that's another thing to answer. Again, one more reason he climbs up there is immortality.
I think when theater is done well, you have an evening of communication. It's like someone telling a story, you know, at a kitchen table. And, you know, those are those rare moments in life where you say, wow, someone's sharing something, telling me this great story. That's maybe a thing that's a little more lost nowadays. But I do think, you know, if you're in a room and it's actually really happening, and it's not because someone's this big famous person and they're doing this great play, but there's actually something going back and forth, that's a reason to do it. You know, it's like, it's a living moment. And I like to do that, you know, some of the time. Some of the time.
You didn't answer the question, neither did I.
My answer. Maybe it wasn't your answer.
I bullshitted the question, you didn't answer it. It's a tough one.
That's a good question.
Hello. So my question is, why did you choose the young woman as the actress for?
Why did we choose her?
Why did you choose her? What were the
What criteria?
Wow, there were so many people to choose from. You got it,
right?
Andre.
I'm just curious.
You mean what criteria?
Yes.
Wow. This play would be dead without an actress who can do that part fabulously.
Yeah.
It's not true for every play, by the way. For this one, without her, it's nothing. And the amount of qualities she has to have is remarkable.
So what are these qualities? I'm just curious.
Childlike, sexy, mystical, esoteric, super interesting without trying to be, naturally interesting. There are some people who have that thing that you can't take your eyes off them because whatever they do is fascinating. And I guess that was one of them. And she had to be young, by the way. Because, you know, like with Juliet, well, this is a little different, but it doesn't work that well when Juliet could be the mother of Juliet. And this play needs that. Because the difference in age is essential, too, for this play. Because otherwise we lose a lot of themes of the play.
Thank you.
That's it.
I see.
Oh, there's a hand.
Sorry, I knew there was something there. Yeah.
Hi. I just want to thank you for Endgame. Frankly, that was a wonderful production I've seen since two since, and it made me appreciate yours more. One of the things I realized that I most appreciated about it was how you dealt with the humor. You weren't playing to the audience, but it was very funny. How do you know when you're going too far, when you have to pull it back? when you're dealing with humor, for example, in Master Builder, do you have a sense about when it's going to work, when it's not?
Well, I will say something about Endgame. One of the reasons why I wanted to do it with Andrei is that Andrei really has a real understanding of Beckett. I think there are a lot of directors who are very, very successful, and they maybe, Beckett is like a poet of failure. I'm not saying Andrei is a poet of failure, you know what I mean? But he understands something like intrinsic about it. And he understands the savagery of it, also the communication, which it could be a father-son, lovers, brothers, husband, wife, team, or whatever it is. And he just understood it in a very, very deep way. And I think we were both frightened of the play, in a way. And I think it's one of the greatest plays. I think it's one of the greatest plays. It was like doing 5 plays in one evening. Because it's a diamond, that play. And we wanted to do it again. We were unable to actually do it on Broadway because it's never been done on Broadway. It's actually never been done. It's like one of the great plays. And people are afraid. They want to do it, with a subscription audience and whatever. But we'd certainly like to do it again, at some time. But I just think he just knew what it was. And once again, when we auditioned people, we auditioned a lot of great actors. And the actor, Max Casella, who came in, had worked with me in The Souls of Naples, Di Filippo. And Andrei saw him and he said, wow, you guys have this amazing chemistry together. And a lot of the play had to do with that. It really had to do with that. And he understood it. And he really guided us through it and pushed us. Even Elaine Stritch, who didn't want to get in that garbage can. She kept saying, that's this Beckett guy, he's such a bastard. He doesn't like women, does he? Puts me in a garbage can, I was like, Elaine, you agreed to do the play, you're in a garbage can. You're gonna die, Some nights she didn't want to die, you know what I mean? She didn't want to die. But I mean, play is just, he said, sit on her, sit on her. You know what I mean? It's just, it's like what every child wants to do to their parents, put them in garbage cans. And then they come out and they say, oh, yeah, okay, you can talk for a while. Now get back in the garbage can. But I mean, he just, he understood it. He really did. And people, I remember Albie came to see it. And he came down and you weren't here. And he said, oh, I loved it. He said, it was so cruel. So cruel. He said, funny, but cruel. Nothing bourgeois about it. Yeah, he's not, and he's not. That's what he's not. And it was him, really.
Well, the truth is, it's all in the play. We did a very humble job, to be honest. Just kind of looked at the stage directions. And it's not easy to do that, but the amount of respect, I wouldn't dare try the smallest thing other than what Beckett wanted to. And it always, whenever I tried, it was years ago with other plays like Godot, I tried a little bit, the next day I'm going, this is stupid. It's so much better the way he wrote it. And it's there, but to be perfectly honest, I was terrified about if this is not funny, we're gonna go and shoot ourselves, basically, and be depressed for the rest of our lives. And luckily it was funny.
So what is your next project together? Do you fantasize about the next one while you're making the current one?
Ubu rock. It's something we've been talking about for a while, and it's not easy to find a venue. John is not so secret rock and roll star, and he's got those qualities.
I really am a rock and roll star. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. This lady has a question.
Question for Andrei. Could you see the Master Builder reinterpretation of it with the male protagonist played as a female character? An aging female coping with that?
I could not hear the beginning of it.
Okay. Could you see a reinterpretation of the Master Builder with the male protagonist played by an aging female going through the motions of aging?
You know what? That sounds very, very interesting, I have to say. I never thought of it, but when you said it, yes.
That's what I'm doing in the play. That's why I wanted to do the play. You know, that's how I'm playing it.
That's why we started a little late. You had to get out of all of the outfit.
Long wig.
Yeah.
You'll
So
see.
much stuff. Wonderful.
No, that's a good idea. That's interesting.
I'm tempted to draw us to a close, although I would like to ask, everybody who makes a show would like audiences to come in somehow prepared. And BAM audiences, you've performed in front of BAM audiences a lot at this point. What is your sort of, what would you like them to know? What would you like them to, how would you like them to be prepared when they walk in the room?
Have a drink. Just kidding. No, I don't, you know, I love, I mean, I've never seen better audiences than what I saw in terms of an audience. Yeah. So it's fantastic. Sometimes I go to a Broadway show and I want to do something else, whatever. But because of some of the audiences, you know, all they want is dinner, or they had dinner and it's heavy and the digestion's not working, whatever. So this is a fabulous place that way. I don't expect anyone to prepare. In fact, just come and have fun and get depressed with us. Yes.
Can we thank Andrei Belgrader and John Turturro?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.